And thank you for watching This Is Now. It's a first alert weather day for the islands of Oahu and Kauai as a kona low just north of the state continues to bring wet conditions and the threat of flooding. Now, the National Weather Service and the city's Emergency Management Center continue to closely monitor water levels in the Wilson Reservoir, otherwise known as Lake Wilson. At 11:45, the monitors there showed the water level at 82.2 feet. That's still just short of 84 feet, which is the threshold that would spur evacuations in surrounding areas. But our crews there say some residents downstream have started evacuating as a precaution. Now, emergency officials say water levels have not reached a point where a public warning or evacuations are necessary.
So the way these things are designed, the spillway is sort of like an emergency relief valve for these dams, so that when the water starts going up, there's somewhere the water can go out to, rather than continuing to fill up the dam to a more dangerous level. So that excess water will start running off the spillway as it's designed to do. It's meant to allow for that additional flow of water out of the reservoir, so that we can keep it at a safe level. We are monitoring this very closely, but of course we have plans in place with our first responders should we have the need to evacuate any communities downstream from there.
Now, the city and NWS both advise residents living in Otake Camp and in areas near the Kaukonahua stream in Waialua to pay attention to weather alerts and stay vigilant in the event evacuations are necessary. Now, if you live near a dam or reservoir, you should familiarize yourself with your area's evacuation plan. You can find those on our website, hawaiinewsnow.com. Now let's get your latest forecast with meteorologist Drew Davis, who's here to tell us what's the latest, Drew.
Hey, Ashley, we're watching the radar very, very closely because of the Lake Wilson situation going on and the runoff going into the reservoir. I want to give you a look at the advisories that we have up right now. We do have a flood advisory up for the island of Oahu that continues until 2 p.m. this evening. It could be extended if we continue to see showers throughout the rest of today. This is the only island that's under an advisory throughout the rest of today, at least for right now. A quick look at your first alert radar and satellite. You can see a lot of moisture out there. You know, in between Kauai and Oahu is where we are seeing the heaviest rainfall. Let's zoom in a little bit closer to the gathering place. We're seeing lighter showers right here on the island chain. And let's zoom in a little bit closer to Lake Wilson so you can see where the rainfall is. Here's Wahiawa, and zooming in just a little bit closer. Over the last hour, we've had slight showers over Lake Wilson. As these showers are going to be weakening over the next several hours and the rainfall threat transitions from Oahu and closer to Kauai, runoff will be the main concern with the reservoir. And let's take a little bit closer look at just the southwest and western parts of just west of the island. You can see the front is stalled in between Kauai and Oahu, and a lot of that moisture is happening offshore. A little bit closer to Kauai, we can see some moisture just to the east and southeast of the island as we're going forward throughout the rest of today. And later into tonight is when the flooding threat will reach Kauai. We still have a flood watch up for Niihau, Kauai, and Oahu. Here's a look at the rainfall totals over the last 24 hours. With this being over the last 24 hours, it doesn't include some of the rainfall that happened yesterday early morning. You can see Kahuku in the last 24 hours, 4.5 inches of rainfall. Maunawili, 6 1/5 inches. Waimanalo, 5.5 inches. Mililani, 4.5 inches of rainfall. A lot of heavy rainfall coming down over the island of Oahu over the last 24 hours, and we're still tracking some slight showers over the island right now. A quick look at the futurecast as we're going forward throughout the next couple of hours. You can see we are going to see some continued moisture over the island chain. Some heavy rainfall is possible. However, the threat is diminishing going forward, and you can see that the heavy rainfall threat again is going to be moving towards Kauai throughout this afternoon and evening. And what's very unique about this situation is that as we get into Friday night into early Saturday morning, this front is going to intensify to the west of Kauai, so some thunderstorms could develop onshore of Kauai and to the west of the island. Here's a quick look at your first alert 7-day forecast. Tomorrow is a first alert weather day as well, at least for the island of Kauai. And Sunday, we've lit up in red as we're still tracking some residual moisture.
All All right, Drew, thanks for being with us this week. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
All right, and we want to show you more flooding video from around Oahu and tell you about some impacts and closures that we want to pass along. So there was a large pothole in the right lane of the H1 westbound before the Poly off-ramp, but we're told that was just patched and the lane has reopened. There's some closures in Kaka'ako, Kamakee Street and Queen Street and Cummins, and Queen Street behind Whole Foods closed to flooding, and the state land department says Diamond Head will be closed for a second day because of more rockfall near the tunnel entrance. For a look at more headlines, here's the Super Block. 3 men were shot, 1 killed in a deadly shooting in Wahiawa. It happened at what police are calling an illegal gambling establishment on Kamehameha Highway. The shooting happened at around 9:30 last night after an argument inside. One victim in his 20s was shot and killed. The 2 other victims were taken to the hospital in serious condition, including one unidentified man in his 20s. The male suspect fled the scene and is still on the run. Honolulu police are also on the lookout for a suspect in a separate shooting. Just before 6 Thursday morning, police say 45-year-old Paul Hodges rammed his girlfriend's car, then fired multiple shots. The woman was hospitalized in serious condition. If you see Hodges, do not approach him. Call 911 instead. The man accused of murdering a former gang member turned youth counselor in Aiea has been charged. Philemone Tavake allegedly shot and killed Malachi Mo Maumalanga back in 2021. It was allegedly connected to drug trafficking. Court documents say Tavake was providing meth for Maumalanga to sell. Investigators found about 8 pounds of suspected meth at Maumalanga's home. Tavake faces 20 years to life in prison if convicted. And check out this video into our newsroom from Nanakuli. This is near the area of Pua Avenue and Farrington Highway where a car hit the bus stop, then went into a ditch at around 7:30 this morning. This is near the Starbucks there. HPD says the car was towed away. A man is dead following a motorcycle crash on Hawaii Island. It happened yesterday at the intersection of Mamalahoa Highway and Leilani Street. Police got the call at around 5:40 p.m. We're told the 59-year-old overtook several vehicles before striking a rock embankment and flew off his motorcycle. He was taken to the hospital where he was later pronounced dead. It's part of a deadly trend on Hawaii County roads. This is now the 18th traffic fatality this year, compared to just 8 at this time last year. A luxury tour yacht is stuck on the rocks off West Maui. The 120-foot Maui Princess ran aground in shallow waters off Lahaina at around 8:30 yesterday morning, but the Coast Guard says they are not responding because the crew is not in distress. We're waiting to hear back from state and county officials on possible injuries, coral damage, or any fuel leaks. The jury in the case accusing Keith Kaneshiro and employees of an engineering firm of bribery continues deliberations today. In closing arguments, the defense said there was no evidence of a conspiracy and there was no bribery. And they told the jury the government twisted local practices of aloha and giving omiyage into something sinister. The government says the case is about corruption and abuse of power. It is no longer illegal in Hawaii to carry a dangerous weapon in public, and switchblades and butterfly knives are no longer banned. Daryl Huff explains why a new law led to an unusual sight in Waikiki on Tuesday.
The governor signed HB 2342 into law Monday without fanfare, making it immediately legal to openly carry weapons that were banned in public until now. One gun rights activist decided to celebrate in a very visual way.
I'm down here in Waikiki with some really great news.
To make his point, Andrew Namiki Roberts brandished medieval weapons in a public park.
So I can be down here with my halberd, walk around with it, and not break the law. I also have an 18-inch Viking axe, perfectly legal. The other thing that's now legal is switchblades and butterfly knives. You can own, possess, and carry them as long as it's done openly.
You can now open carry any dangerous and deadly weapon, and the law now only prohibits the concealed carry of those weapons.
It's 6 foot tall. It's basically a spear, axe, hook all at once. It scares the bejeebus out of me. It really, really, really does. But it's perfectly legal for me to carry as long as I do so safely.
It's a serious crime both before and after this bill to carry a weapon in a manner that threatens or terrorizes others.
In hearings on the bill, the Attorney General said the change was to modernize and align Hawaii's concealed weapons laws with other places and courtrooms. But to some, it didn't make sense to legalize knives that would be only carried in public.
This is concealed. So that's a felony now. This is unconcealed. You know, if I'm running down the street with a butterfly knife in my hands, does that make it any better than if I just got it slipped in my pocket?
The new law also says people who legally carry concealed firearms will face felony charges if they commit even a minor crime, like driving without a license.
If they are validly in possession of a firearm, but they're driving without a valid driver's license as a misdemeanor, then they also could face a Class C felony.
For decades, again, it's been a felony under state law to possess a firearm while committing a crime. So this bill doesn't in any way expand meaningfully the scope of the existing prohibition.
Gun rights attorneys say this law was rushed to prevent the state from losing another Second Amendment lawsuit in federal court. The Attorney General didn't comment on that. Daryl Huff, Hawaii News Now.
At least 4 people are dead in Texas following severe weather, and crews are still working to get power on for hundreds of thousands of people. Dave Malkoff is in Houston, which was hit especially hard.
The city of Houston is in recovery mode after winds up to 100 miles per hour and rain slammed southeast Texas for the second time in a month.
Stay away from downtown. Stay off the road.
Streets downtown are now littered with glass from high-rise buildings that were blown out.
We all took cover in the bathroom, windows blown out, trees flying everywhere.
All members, please go to the middle of the store.
In Houston, people packed into a Costco to take shelter before the lights went out. At one point, about 1 million customers in the affected areas were left in the dark.
We are going to have to talk about this disaster in weeks, not days.
The storm turned fatal for some, including an elderly worker who was killed after a crane fell onto the cab of his cement truck.
It's amazing how many people came so close to losing everything. And we need to keep them in our thoughts.
Just north of Houston, rounds of extreme weather have slammed the area in recent weeks, and residents there are still shaken up. All this was someone's house.
It's everyone's lives, just on the street.
As the cleanup continues, officials are urging non-essential workers to stay off the streets and roads and continue to have patience with first responders. Dave Malkoff, CBS News, Houston.
A U.S.-built pier is now operational off Gaza, and trucks are rolling ashore with desperately needed aid. Now, this comes as we're learning more than 20 American medical workers are trapped in Gaza after Israel closed the crossing in Rafah. Imtiaz Tiab spoke with one of those workers, and we want to warn you, some of the images in his story are disturbing.
Black smoke rises above Rafah as Israel's southern offensive widens. And in the north, they're now fighting a resurgence of Hamas. Fighting that didn't spare 10-year-old Samaya, who lost her arm in an airstrike and needs advanced medical care. I want the border crossings opened again, she says, so I can go and get a new arm and be like everyone else again. Also in Gaza are around 20 American medics trapped after Israel blocked all land crossings in the south. Now doing all they can while they wait to be allowed to go home.
We see explosive injuries, burns, shrapnel wounds. So, and the problem with this is these are wounds that we don't usually see in America.
Among the trapped medics are trauma nurse Monica Johnson from Oregon and Dr. Mahmoud Sabha from Texas.
We came in with such good intentions, obviously, and wanting to help and save lives. We haven't had a single wound patient in the ICU that has made it out.
Not a single one?
No.
Most of their patients are among the youngest in Gaza.
She had glitter on her fingernails. She had discolored hair. It's these things like these things. It really affects you because you really see the innocence.
Sabah and Johnson say they know their families are worried about them, but as medics, they had to help the people of Gaza.
I've always said to my kids, follow your heart. And in my heart, this feels like what I'm supposed to be doing.
Still, every day is a challenge.
Medical supplies, we are getting almost none because we bring in our own medical supplies and we're burning through it.
You've been working alongside your Palestinian colleagues for all these weeks now. How are they doing?
They're broken and they are empty. So the thought of leaving them and leaving them while they're so empty is heartbreaking.
And we've just received this message from Nurse Monica as she tries to leave Gaza, which I'll read to you. It says, "We are currently waiting at the Israeli border. It was a difficult passage. We had a tank pointing its barrel at us for exactly 1 hour before letting us through one of the checkpoints. We were so heartbroken to leave over half our team and the people of Gaza. I am so fearful for their safety." That's Nurse Monica Johnson from Portland, Oregon, as she tries to leave Gaza. Imtiaz Time, CBS News, Tel Aviv.
President Biden is using the anniversary of a landmark Supreme Court ruling to tout the work America has done to ensure that all people, regardless of race, are treated equally. But the movement to integrate schools is losing steam in many areas across the country. Willie James Inman has more.
President Biden arrived at the National Museum of African American History and Culture to commemorate the 70th anniversary of the landmark Supreme Court ruling ending school segregation.
When the Supreme Court ruled in Brown versus the Board of Education that racial segregation in public schools is unconstitutional, a prayer was answered in a long struggle for freedom.
Thursday, the president met with some of the plaintiffs in the case and their families at the White House. They praised the Supreme Court ruling, saying it impacted the lives of every American. But they acknowledged the fight to end separate but equal is not over.
We know we have a lot of work to do in that education is still challenging in some places, but we have to realize that education is foundational to our country.
In the last decade, the number of suburban school districts with 90 to 100% of non-white students has doubled in the nation's 25 largest metropolitan areas. These so-called resegregated schools face limited resources and more teacher shortages than predominantly white schools. Those districts represent 30% of the nation's entire public school enrollment. President Biden is spending more time talking about issues important to African Americans as he looks to shore up support with black voters ahead of the presidential election.
Today, the resistance comes in other insidious forms. An extreme movement led by my predecessor and his MAGA Republican allies, backed by an extreme Supreme Court, gutted affirmative action in college admissions.
This weekend, the president will deliver the commencement address at Morehouse College, a historically black college in the battleground state of Georgia. Willie James Inman, CBS News, Washington.
Here's another live look outside with our tower cam. We're going to have more headlines for you coming up after this quick break. Second round play at the PGA Championships in Louisville was delayed today by a fatal road accident and the arrest of one of golf's top players. Danya Backus has the latest.
Scottie Scheffler eventually teed off at the PGA Championship in Louisville Friday after a chaotic morning that landed him in jail.
He's going to jail, and it ain't nothing you can do about it.
The world's #1 ranked golfer is facing numerous charges, including assaulting a police officer. It all happened after a fatal road accident that caused a massive traffic jam heading to the golf course. Police say Scheffler disobeyed orders to stop his car, accelerated forward, and dragged an officer to the ground.
I believe he attempted to explain who he was and why he was trying to get onto the golf course, but I'm not sure that information quite got to the police.
Scheffler said in a statement that he was proceeding as directed by officers, that it was a chaotic situation and, quote, a big misunderstanding of what I thought I was being asked to do. I never intended to disregard any of the instructions. The 27-year-old golfer has hired a local attorney.
We'll just let it all play out. That's the extent of what we know. It's moving pretty fast at this time, but we'll litigate the case as it comes.
Scheffler is the hottest player on the PGA Tour. The Masters champ is seeking his 5th win in 6 starts and a 2nd consecutive major title. Danya Backus, CBS News.
Heads up if you're planning to travel soon. The TSA says it's getting ready for what it's calling the busiest summer travel season ever. It starts with the upcoming Memorial Day weekend. Between May 23rd and May 29th, the TSA expects to screen more than 18 million passengers at airport checkpoints nationwide. Next Friday is forecast to be the busiest day of the long weekend, with around 3 million people expected to fly.
There will be some days this summer that we will likely see 3 million travelers in our screening checkpoints across the country. Our current record is about 2.9 million, but we expect 3 or 3.1 million travelers, most likely during the busiest days during the core of the summer in July and early part of August.
So far this year, the TSA says passenger travel is already up 8%.
3, 2, 1, go!
A dozen men and women from across the U.S. and around the world gathered for lunch in New York City's Times Square today. All were chowing down during this qualifying round for the Nathan's famous hot dog eating contest on July 4th. Now, over the course of 10 minutes, the contestants had to eat as many hot dogs and buns as they could for a chance to compete against a roster of top-ranked competitive eaters on Coney Island in Brooklyn. By the time they finished, they put away more than 100 hot dogs and dozens of gallons of water.
To come down here and win it in Times Square in front of you guys has been an amazing day.
An OG of Nigeria won the men's division. The current kale eating champion of the world downed 35 hot dogs. OG hopes to unseat defending world champion Joey Chestnut, who last year ate 62 hot dogs. Among the women, competitive eater Laurel Marie Melly gobbled down 16 hot dogs to advance to the big contest. All right, let's end with some good news. A British toddler has had her hearing restored after becoming the first person in the world to take part in a pioneering gene therapy trial sponsored by an American company. Leigh Kinnery has the story from London.
For Opal Sandy, an 18-month-old girl in England, life just got a lot louder. Yeah! Opal was born with a rare genetic condition that made her completely deaf. But her parents, Joe and James Sandy, were invited to take part in a global gene therapy trial.
To potentially make obstacles easier for her to overcome was a risk definitely worth taking.
Opal received an infusion in one ear containing a working copy of the faulty DNA Opal was born with. Just 4 weeks after the procedure, her parents saw this.
Absolutely mind-blowing.
I'm not sure I believed it at the start. I think I said it was just a fluke.
But a fluke it was not. 6 months later, doctors confirmed Opal had near normal hearing. Professor Manohar Bance is Opal's surgeon. What was your reaction when you heard that it worked?
I really was a bit flabbergasted because we all expected in theory it to work, but to see it in practice, to see the actual audiogram and see it responding, it was a bit unreal. and very joyful.
The trial is sponsored by American biotech company Regeneron and is recruiting more young patients in the U.S.
Hiya, Ladybird.
Opal Sandy may not know she's become part of a major medical breakthrough, but now knows the sound of her mother's voice.
Mummy kiss?
Lee Canary, CBS News, London.
All right, thanks for watching. First, This Is Now. We want to pass this along, though. The jury has reached a verdict in the case of former city prosecutor Keith Kaneshiro. He's accused of taking bribes from workers at an engineering firm, Mitsunaga and Associates, to prosecute a fired employee of the firm. We're going to have more details on this coming up online and on air.